Welcome to Dulles. We're a community of faith that embodies the love of Jesus for the good of our neighbor and renewal of our world. We're so glad you're listening.
Okay, we're in this vision series this fall talking about who we are, where we're headed as a church, and it happened to be an election week. You may not have noticed that. I'm sure you probably didn't. You don't see things like political arguing or debating, I'm sure. I have come to the conclusion, as important as our country is, and as important as it is, and I'm taking the time to stress, as it is to vote and to debate, and there are healthy ways to debate. Yes, those things matter to us, and they matter to me personally. But I have come to the place of believing deeply now, that political passion, political opinions have a way of depleting vision out of us. Political passion and loud opinion tends to overtake us or consume us mentally, emotionally, and I'm going to add it, spiritually. I've seen it happen to many people in our country. I watch it happen online. I see it happen here close to home. As important as countries are, and as our country, and I'm so grateful for our country, and you've heard me express that, and this is Veterans Day. We're a couple of days away from Veterans Day, and if you served, would you just let us know if you served? If you are, yes. Okay, we are so grateful to be in a country where we have veterans who have done what we can't even think or imagine to protect our country. These things matter to us, but politics has evolved in a way that it becomes all-consuming, and I believe it overtakes us spiritually, not just mentally, not just in our debates or emotionally. And when that happens, vision gets depleted out of us. It's very deceptive. Political passion's deceptive. It feels like vision. It feels like we're taking a stand and we need to debate and push back, and it really has nothing to do with the New Testament and what our true vision is here at Dulles. What we're following as the map, the outline of what Jesus has called us to, that I believe is life-changing and is like a high that compares to nothing else on this planet, is following the way of Jesus, the mandate, the call, the picture of the future that he envisions. Jesus' disciples were distraught at his arrest and his crucifixion, really for a couple of reasons. It was obvious they were distraught that this was their friend. Jesus had become their dear friend. He also had become the Messiah. They were convinced. They knew, wow, this is the Messiah who's actually come to earth. But where it relates to politics is that they had been convinced that the Messiah, who had now arrived, was here to politically overthrow a couple of different groups, specifically the Pharisaic Jewish leaders who were corrupt. They had corrupted the whole religious system. And they believed the Messiah, that Jesus had come to overthrow or push back the Roman occupation of Jerusalem and Israel. And here they watch him die, and they see this dream die in front of them. They thought primarily Jesus had come to stage a political overthrow. The disciples were constantly on the verge of forfeiting the true vision that Jesus was inviting them into by diverting back to this political passion, this distraction of something that was lesser, much lesser, and was a broken version of what it is to see human hearts change and be transformed, like toward real life, ultimate life. So what is vision? We've been talking about this throughout the fall. Vision is a picture, good vision, inspiring vision is a picture of the future that motivates you now. It motivates you in the present. You actually want to you hear about this product or you hear about this idea, you see the potential of what it could create, and you want to be a part of it. It changes your behavior. It changes the decisions you make, your schedule, your priorities, even your hobbies. Like, I'm all in. I want to be a part of this now. It doesn't exist yet. It's a picture of the future, but I want to be part of making it happen. That's what vision is. And Jesus gives us the picture of the future. And he calls all of us into it, not just for you and me to benefit personally, but to participate in this life-changing, human-changing mission idea that centers around grace, which we're going to get to here in just a moment. What is specifically our picture of the future? You know, we could talk about building a nice church building someday, and I think that's going to happen. I think that's part of our future. That's not our vision. That's not the picture of the future that really moves us and inspires us. We could talk about filling every seat. And there are reasons to be excited about seeing someone new come and join us. It does excite us. It excites me. And yes, we want what we're experiencing to reach out into the communities and neighborhoods, of course. But numbers sometimes overtakes a church where the vision becomes numbers or a crowd. What motivates us, what inspires us, is the picture of you and me becoming so much the image and picture of Jesus himself that the most skeptical people around you find your life attractive and they want what you have. They're leaning into who you are as a person and the way you see the world and the way you debate and the way you see your enemy. They find it incredibly compelling and different than anything else they can find around them. And they're drawn toward you and drawn toward your experience at church, which centers around, of course, Jesus, who changes everything. This is our picture of the future, that we would become the light, the image bearer of God himself, so much so that the most unthinkable person or neighbor or coworker finds themselves drawn and attracted to who you are. I often say, and when I journal about this, I say it's the most exciting idea on earth. I dare people to give me a technology or a company or some political speech that rivals this picture of the future. I believe this version of Jesus Church is the most exciting idea on earth. And I've given my life to it. It's become my occupation, but Jesus calls all of us to give our lives to this picture. Regardless of what our job is and where we live and our neighborhood, housing context, he wants you and me to give our lives to this idea. Now, it's crazy to me that political debates and opinions and division has dissolved to the point of kind of sin language. You wouldn't say this about the other side. You wouldn't look at the other side of you politically and maybe use the word sin, but we talk that way. We talk as if someone is so fallen or broken. And we're evaluating this based on their political opinion. And so I want to pull us back. I want to pull us back to Jesus' picture. We're going to look again this morning at Jesus' picture, what he came to establish, what he sees, what he envisions for this thing that he would call the church, this ecclesia, that we translate to church, this movement of a shared experience of hearts that are changed. We can't change ourselves. We don't have the ability to change ourselves. He's doing something beautiful to remake us. And that's what we have in common. And we together, with that common unity, become a movement. This is what ecclesia means. This is what his describing to the disciples, his church. This church, I'm starting a church. And it will sweep the globe. In churches that look like Jesus, in a lot of cases, we have experiences. It's tragic. It's the greatest tragedy. We talk about the most exciting idea on earth. The greatest tragedy on earth is when a church stops looking or sounding or behaving like Jesus. And church history has a lot of that. And it causes confusion and it causes people to push back. American church attendance in the last 10 years has been the lowest ever in our history. In large part, not so much because of our view of Jesus, Americans' view of Jesus, but Americans' view of the church. You see survey and study after study, the church just doesn't look like. It doesn't look like what I think Jesus is or what he sounds like. So let's pull back and look at the church, the vision that Jesus was envisioning, that he was establishing with his followers. And I want to just say this up front. Like Jesus, here at Dulles, we intentionally start with people's stories, not with their sin. We will always start with someone's story and not their brokenness or not the shame. And it's crazy, and I'm going to leave politics now. I'm going to make one more point here about politics, how we're equating political views with this sort of ideal of sin or brokenness. Like they're just so far gone. I feel bad for them because they're just so, being on the other side of you politically, it's almost like we see them in sin. And this has become an ideological way that Americans think and operate and relate and actually practice engagement today. So I want to say, like Jesus, we start with the person's story, their experience, their hurt. We're not afraid of the shame that they may be experiencing because you and I have experienced our own shame, and we have found Jesus' love and good in the middle of our own mess. So I want to go to one of many examples, and I'm going to continue this here and beyond this Sunday. This morning, we're going to look primarily at John chapter 8. This is one of those dramatic scenes as a kid growing up in church when I was old enough to start to kind of understand, like, wait a minute, what's happening here? This is like one of these rated R scenes right out of the Gospels. And it is level setting for God's view of the future and what he's establishing for you and I to understand what he had in mind for the future church, what he had in mind for this ecclesia, this movement that he was establishing. Jesus went to the Mount of Olives. This is just outside of the city wall of Jerusalem. At dawn, he appeared again in the temple courts, where all the people gathered around him, and he sat down to teach them. He's just amassing more and more crowds of people are enamored with this love. He doesn't seem so rule-focused. He's communicating this completely different version or new version of God's kingdom. And he's saying this kingdom has arrived. He's brought this kingdom. He's brought this reality. And so here we have another crowd gathering to hear Jesus. Now, the teachers of the law, the Old Testament law of Moses, these are the Pharisees, they have become the de facto political leaders of Jerusalem and Israel. They're the spiritual leaders, but they're also the political leaders. These teachers of the law and the Pharisees bring in a woman. They're bringing her into the temple courts. I mean, imagine this. Imagine this scene today. Sometimes we get so locked into Bible stories, like, well, this is what happened. Imagine in just a few minutes, leaders that you and I are supposed to respect drag someone in and up here to the front in what we would call our temple here this morning, our gathering. The teachers of the law and these Pharisees bring in this woman who's been caught in adultery. This implies they've trapped her in some way. They've been following her. This is a setup. And this is all to test Jesus. This is all designed. They're using her to really test and kind of expose what they think is a fallacy in Jesus. They made her stand before the group. I mean, this is just shame. This is leadership-induced shame. And they said to Jesus in front of this crowd who's amassed to hear Jesus, in front of this very public scene, "Teacher, this woman was caught in the act of adultery. In the law of Moses, we're commanded to stone such women." We'll get to that here in just a moment, just explaining that a little more. "Now, what do you say, Jesus?" They were using this question as a trap in order to have a basis for accusing him. All right, they're trying to trap Jesus because they're losing control. They can smell it. They can see it with every engagement that Jesus has with people in this growing fever pitch that something new has arrived. This rabbi, this teacher, this is different. This is about heart change. He's offering us, he's saying God offers everyone, the poorest of the poor, those who are considered diseased or considered unclean because of physical ailments. He's saying that we have special place in this kingdom. And the religious leaders, the Pharisees, are threatened by this. They control through laws and rules. And so this trap is all about trying to salvage their control. And of course, this strategy of theirs will evolve over the next couple of years to the point where they crucify him. I mean, this is how determined they are to trap him or end his message. And it's all about control. It's all about, in some cases, political rightness. N.T. Wright is one of my favorite scholars, theologians, biblical scholars, and I've cited him often here. He describes the Old Testament law can be so confusing to us today in the era of the church on this side of the resurrection. We have trouble understanding so many laws of Moses and are we not supposed to observe them anymore? They're in the Bible. This can be very confusing, and some of our Bible study labs that we offer really get to the heart of explaining these things. So if you're curious, I've never understood this, sign up for Starting Point or the new Intro to the Bible that we're going to be offering. But N.T. Wright talks about how the Old Testament laws of Moses were a temporary tutor, a temporary guide or tutor, now it lasted generations, to show humans we do not have the ability to make ourselves right. No matter how many laws, no matter how many rules are put in front of us, and that was the Mosaic, that was called the Torah, the Mosaic law, the laws that Israel was supposed to follow, were intended to show us we can't follow enough rules or laws to make our hearts right, to actually become, once again, the image of God that we were intended to be. And so God gave us this, before Jesus' death and resurrection, he gave us this model, this set of rules and laws that humans would never be able to live up to. God's law was always meant to bring restoration, not retribution. That was never the ultimate intent. So when a law was established deep in the Old Testament about stoning to death someone who had created such shame or brokenness or stepped way outside of God's plan for their lives, it was intended to show all of us, to get our attention of what happened in Eden. Anything we do or say, any way we behave that's outside of God's plan, outside of God's design for you, leads to death. God told us that in the beginning. Don't step outside of my plan. With me at the center of your life, you will only experience life and thriving. But if you step outside of me as your God, if you try to become God, if you try to take control, it will lead to death. It will lead to relational death. It will lead to physical death. You will not thrive and live as you do in the presence of God. That was the clear mandate and instruction of God in Eden. The Old Testament law of Moses is designed to take us back there, to show us this will lead to death. And this stoning law, which just seems so horrific and barbaric, again, on this side of the cross and resurrection, we live in an era and a time where we just have trouble getting our minds around this. The ultimate plan was always that God would step into our shame, our brokenness, our grossness, the worst of our sin, and take it upon himself. The Old Testament law was just to point to, we need that. We need intervention. We need God to do something because we can't fix ourselves. I cannot make myself right. And Jesus is, now the attempt is to trap Jesus, but Jesus uses this to trap them and to expose truth and to reveal this new thing that he's doing. Brand new, life-changing, world-changing introduction of grace and mercy into the human experience. Because he's going to absorb our sin. He's going to absorb our ugly. And he begins revealing this. Jesus bends down. This is how he responds. He bends down and started to write on the ground with his finger. And this has been a mystery that's been written about. There's volumes and theology classes. This is discussed. What was Jesus writing? And I have some theories, and I've followed some theologians that I think they're right in their assessment of what Jesus was writing. We'll talk about that here in a minute. Jesus bends down and starts writing in the dirt, writing on the ground with his finger in the dirt. When they kept on questioning him, he straightened up and said to them, okay, let any of you who was without sin be the first one to throw a stone at her. Go ahead. You guys can stone this woman, but the one that throws the first stone should be the one who's got no brokenness in their life. No ugly. You've never violated God's heart, his plan, or the Old Testament laws. Again, he stoops down and continues writing on the ground. Now, let me pause here and tell you what I believe. This is kind of my theory. And again, Tim Mackey and N.T. Wright and other theologians have really informed this thought for me over many years now. N.T. Wright is suggesting that Jesus is first calling us back to creation when he himself was the instrument of creation in forming humans out of the dirt, out of the ground. That's the first visual that Jesus is giving us. But more importantly, he's using this opportunity to rewrite the law. He is rewriting by writing something in the context of these men's sin. I don't know if he's actually writing out some of their sin, like Bob last week. I don't know if he's doing that. We don't know exactly what he's writing, but it has something to do with them casting the first stone if they have no sin. And he's, in essence, rewriting the law for humanity. We're not following the Old Testament law of Moses anymore, Jesus is saying. I have come to absorb brokenness. I've come to take your guilt off of you. I have come, yes, as God in the flesh, to take from you the ugly and the defensiveness and the selfish thinking and the self-righteousness. And he's writing something related to their sin in the dirt and thus reestablishing a whole new law. And he's doing this in the dirt in front of them, and the stones begin to drop. At this, those who heard, and of course are seeing what he's writing, they begin to go away one at a time. The older ones first, I guess maybe the wiser were like, oh boy, we just can't beat this guy. He just keeps his wisdom. He's exposing, we're trying to expose him, he's exposing us. Then the younger ones. Until only Jesus was left with the woman standing there. Jesus straightened up and asked her, woman. Now this is interesting. Look at the order of what happens here. Does Jesus say, what in the world are you thinking? Woman, how could you be caught? How could you keep? His first question is, where are they? Where are your accusers? Has no one condemned you? No one, sir, she said. Then neither do I condemn you. This is really interesting theology. Theology is the study of God's interaction with us. This is a fascinating, highly important moment in what Jesus is revealing about his picture of the future. Everything's changing. You will not be approaching people based on their views politically or what they've done in the past. You will not approach your neighbor based on what they're doing currently. You will approach them in love. You will meet them even in their mess. Humanity had never thought this way. There's no culture on earth, certainly not in the broken Jewish religious system. This is radically different thinking. Has anyone condemned you? No one, sir. He says, neither do I condemn you. He hasn't led her to church first and then said, now I don't condemn you. He doesn't have her go through some ecclesiastical steps or some kind of worship. He says, neither do I condemn you. Go now and leave your life of sin. And yes, absolutely, Jesus addresses sin, and he does it case after case, person after person, story after story. Jesus is confronting sin, and if he hasn't already, and I'm sure he has, he will. The day is coming where he will confront your sin, your fallenness from God's image, his design for you. Not because he wants to condemn or point his finger at you, because he wants you to be alive. He wants you to thrive. He wants you to step back closer and closer in that movement to what he intended for you originally. His image, his beauty. Thinking of the world the way he thinks. Engaging others the way he engages others. He wants that for you. That's his design for you. And so he will confront your sin as he confronts my sin. But it's so interesting the way he goes about approaching this woman. He does not start with her sin. He starts with her story. It's interesting that Jesus does know how many men that this woman has been with. He understands the full context. This woman's been caught in the act. He understands this. And there are churches, and I've grown up hearing this early in my faith, and still to this day, you'll hear churches say, but Brad, he confronts her sin. He tells her, you leave this life of sin. He addresses her sin only after running off her accusers. Is that profound to you? We can make this conversational now, just for a moment. Is it? I'm not being rhetorical. Is this profound to you? This changes everything. You no longer have the right to look across the street at the person who behaves or votes or thinks the way they do, keeping your distance until they move kind of in your direction, or they're willing to go to church with you, or they're willing to kind of leave their religion and consider yours. That is not the kingdom that Jesus brought to this earth. He is meeting people in their mess, in their shame. Talk about shame. This woman's been dragged in front of the temple, in front of this crowd. And it's as if Jesus is anxious to step into that pain and hurt with her. Little does she know that he's going to take it onto a cross for her. This is the picture of the future that Jesus is putting in front of us. And I'm going to tell you as lovingly and as boldly as I can, if you are starting with the way someone votes or thinks or the way they behaved, your sin in that act is probably greater than the sin that you're judging. Because your decision, your lifestyle, your approach to a person that I'm going to keep my distance. I'll approach them when they clean up their act. Looks nothing like the New Testament. It looks nothing like the kingdom that Jesus brought. How do you respond to someone's sin? Maybe you don't use that language. I often don't use that word, partly because that word has evolved in our culture to be a judging word. I am broken by sin. I have been broken by sin. Sin is something that Jesus is addressing in my life. Sin is different from the nature of God. It doesn't have to be this big, bad, ugly. But in our culture, sin has come to be this condemning, like if you're talking about sin, oh, somebody's being condemned, and of course Jesus upends that. Maybe your language is someone's behavior that's been ugly. Maybe that's kind of the way the verbiage is in your mind. Or their behavior doesn't lead to life. Do you care about that person first? Do you care about their story? Do you genuinely care about their story? Do you care about the hurt that they've experienced? Do you have empathy? Remember what empathy is. Empathy isn't just, sympathy is feeling sorry for someone. Empathy is relating. Like, man, I can kind of feel what they're going through. Do you respond with empathy to the shame that they're possibly experiencing. This is the picture of the future that Jesus puts in front of us and calls you and me into, and calls you to give your life to. He's calling you to give your life to this picture of the future. If you care about them first, if you genuinely care about them first, you will often have the trust, the attention, and the trust of people who need to give their sin and their brokenness to Jesus. You will often earn the trust of someone when you just care for them first. We have here, we'll put this on the screen. When you care about someone, you care about your approach. Jesus cared greatly about his approach. He wasn't being soft. If you say, well, Brad, this is kind of a soft version. Jesus came to confront sin. Jesus came to meet you and I where we are. And yes, eventually he wants to deal with our sin and get it out of our lives and have us in the movement of becoming his image. But man, does he love you and me. This is the kind of movement I want to be a part of. His movement, his picture. Jesus cared about his approach. We must do so that when the world thinks about our church, they think about Jesus. When our neighbors see the way that we respond, the way we reach, the way we sit at coffee, the way we cry with and put our arms around with, not with somebody who's converted, not with somebody who's now attending church with us, but just the human that God made, the daughter, the son of God. When our neighbors see us approaching people this way, they're going to think of our church and they're going to think of Jesus. And that's beautiful. I've talked about our language here, like if you don't know where to, you reach a point with someone where you feel like, but I do want to invite them. I do want to invite somebody to church with me. We say when the time is right and you know it in your gut, that's the Holy Spirit saying, hey, extend the invitation. We often say, come and see. Jesus said that to the disciples we talked about a couple weeks ago. Come and see. Just come and see. Come explore. Consider our messaging. Consider our story of faith. Come and see and come sit with me. Come and see and come have coffee on a Sunday morning and sit with me. Now, I want to just kind of tease something out here I'm going to complete in my next message. Church leaders today, in many circles, many contexts, are divided over left and right. Church leaders have allowed this national argument and debate and division to come into the church. I don't know if you know, but tomorrow will be 2 months since Charlie Kirk's assassination. And that week that followed, and by the way, I think that we had a very significant Sunday here that morning, that next couple of days later here on Sunday. That week, and you may have seen this online, churches and pastors were being called out. If a pastor seemed to express mourning for Charlie Kirk, he was called out by one side. If a pastor didn't really say a whole lot or as much as maybe he should have, he was called out. And this thing happened in America where people on social media were saying, if your church, if your pastor didn't or did, you should leave that church. It is crazy how loud we've become as followers of Jesus about particular behaviors that align politically. And so I'm going to say this, we're going to put it on the screen, I'm going to take us into this more specifically in my next message. While some church leaders divide between left and right, we here at Dulles will divide between lost and found. And if you want an actual case of Jesus addressing this, he addresses this head on. I mean, he hits this head on. And if this is a struggle for you politically, you might want to think about not being in our next message. Because in Luke 15, Jesus nails this. In my kingdom, we will differentiate between people who are lost and missing from our family and those who've been found. And the ones who are lost, we're going to search for. And we're going to leave the 99 for, and we're going to dive into that more. Holly, would you put, we weren't going to do this, but would you put, I'm also going to reference next time Acts 15, another example. Just the beginning, Acts 15:5. Yeah. Then some of the believers who belonged to the party of the Pharisees stood up and said, the Gentiles, there's a debate happening. We're going to get into this next time. Gentiles, non-Jewish believers, non-Jewish people are beginning to believe in Jesus, and the early church leaders are in this conundrum, like, well, that wasn't supposed to happen. Jesus came just for Jewish people. And they're like, no, that can't be true because we're seeing more and more Gentiles. And then Peter feels called to the Gentiles, and Paul certainly. And this is the council of church leaders trying to figure out, what do we do? What do we do here? And it's interesting that some of the believers were part of the political party. This was happening in the New Testament church, and it's happening today. And Jesus confronts this head on, and he is like, you are not in my kingdom going to divide between left and right. The one differentiator is who's been found through love and grace and mercy, and who's yet to be found, who's still lost, that needs us to engage with love and grace and mercy. And I can't wait to dive into that message. So this morning, we're going to close in worship, and I'm just going to invite you to two things. And they're simple, but they're life-changing. This is simple, but it is profound for the rest of your life and the way you live your future. For some, I came here this morning believing the time is now for you to trust Jesus with your sin. Not trust him religiously. I'm not talking about going to church and I'm going to try to be a good Christian now. I'm talking about trusting him with your ugly and the brokenness that maybe you've never said out loud or you've never voiced to anyone. The time has come for you to voice it to him. He is the only one who can restore you. Old Testament laws are not going to do it. You acting religious is not going to do it. You trying to be good, it's not enough. The law of Moses shows us this. We need God's intervention to take our shame and gross and ugly and way of thinking and brokenness off of us onto him. And I'm inviting you this morning to step into that journey. Your life will never be the same. Letting him restore you, letting him define you, letting him turn your heart into the image of God. And I'll pray with you here in just a moment, and I invite you to tell me. I'm not going to have you stand or make some kind of scene, but you do need to tell someone. Tell Alton, tell Anike, tell me, I've made this decision, and I want to talk to one of my church leaders about it. The second is, I felt so compelled to call us to love, and this sounds simple, like, well, I do love. I'm a good person, Brad. This kind of love, it is unique on planet Earth. There's nothing like it on planet Earth. You walk across the street, you go to coffee and sit with the person who thinks differently than you, that prays differently than you, that votes differently than you, and you love and you empathize. And before there's ever a conversation about sin or habits or religious brokenness, you're running off their accusers. You're meeting them in their shame because you have had shame and you've needed a God who would come into your life and love you where you are. I'm inviting you into that kind of future, into that kind of movement, that you and I would become that kind of church for our neighbors and the communities that make up the Dulles area. Jesus, we now turn these questions and challenges to you. It doesn't matter how someone responds to me this morning. All that matters is how we respond to you. I pray, Jesus, that the person here or the people here who have resisted just surrendering their life to you would do so this morning. God, I pray that they would just stop. They would stop trying to be better. They would stop trying to work out goodness in their head. that they would give their life to you. And that prayer can be this simple. Jesus, I finally give you my life. I give you all of it. I give you that ugly. I give you that awful, that moment, this habit. Jesus, I surrender my life to you. And God, would you set in our minds and hearts the common unity, what binds us together here as your church, this intentional love, this choosing to love the way you loved. Not waiting for people to agree, not waiting for people to come to church, just love the way you loved and the way you love each of us. God, may we establish that kind of church that becomes irresistible to so many people around us. That's our prayer. We worship you in response, Jesus. I invite you to stand as we close.